All right, I think we can go ahead and kick things off. Um, so thank you everybody for joining. This is, as I was explaining to the presenters, sort of an experiment. We've been doing these virtual sessions weekly, but they've been sort of casual with no real program and feedback that I got from people said, that people on the exchange wanted to hear from specialists or hear presentations and not have it be overly casual. And so yeah, I'm happy to see that this has got to turn out because yeah, I am excited about the presentations today. So for people who don't know, Adriane Michaelis, am I pronouncing your last name right? Yep, she's a ecological anthropologist at the Virginia Institute of Marine Science, which is also where I work. And Emily Whitmore is a social scientist with the Maine Aquaculture Innovation Center, and both of them are very involved in the study of the social dimensions of aquaculture. And I will just let them take it away at this point.
All right, great, thanks. Hi everyone, I'm Adriane. I think I know most of the people on this call, but just in case. And I guess, Emily, I'll get started. We don't have a formal presentation, but did have a couple of sort of topics bulleted to work through, hopefully with it to be a conversation too. So don't necessarily need to present for any running amount of time. But so first, I guess just thinking about social dimensions and what we mean when we're talking about the social dimensions of aquaculture, it's a really broad category and sort of broad by intent in terms of our group on the exchange. So we are the moderators of the social dimensions of aquaculture community of practice. And we'll talk a little bit about the community of practice. But the idea was, so Emily and I are both social scientists, but social dimensions work is happening beyond social scientists. And so when we're thinking about social dimensions, it's including folks that are, have degrees in social science, whatever that may be. I'm an anthropologist, but also folks that are working in social dimensions in different ways. And so these may be communicators, educators, extension, scientists, resource managers, sort of you name it, across the board, anyone that's thinking about some of this sort of human component of aquaculture. And some of my work has been focused on social acceptability for aquaculture, livelihood diversification. With Zia, who joined us today, who's starting this summer here at VEMS as an REU, we'll be looking at some gender issues in aquaculture here in Virginia. And yeah, I think that's sort of a quick snapshot. Also cultural ecosystem services. Most people, my work, the cultural services side of it. But Emily, I'll let you talk about a little bit about some of yours and move on.
Yeah, sure. So I'm mostly social license is kind of my main area of research. I also do some public perception stuff, like public perceptions polling, and yeah, the community dimensions. So that's kind of where my work is. I'm so sorry that I'm outside, but I'm gonna move to a place that's less windy. I'm at the Darling Marine Center in Maine, in the center of the state. So hold on just a second.
No worries.
Sure.
And yeah, and so maybe I wonder, since we have a reasonable sized group, maybe everyone can go through. I'll throw this back at the group. So sort of introduce yourself and your connection to social dimensions. If it's you're here and interested, if you're already doing work in this sort of space, sort of would love to hear who's on. And I guess I'll sort of navigate this. Claire, you are first on the list. So Claire, do you want to introduce yourself from the airport?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Claire. I'm a PhD candidate from UC Santa Barbara. And I I'm doing some research in aquaculture, and particularly the chapter that I'm starting right now, like this week, is for like kind of looking at some social acceptance of aquaculture in combination with other ocean sectors. So yeah, it's been interesting for me to kind of be part of the community of practice that Adriane and Emily are building, because it's fascinating, but also very applicable to me at this particular point in my education. So good to meet you all.
Great, thanks, Claire. All right, and Zia, you're up next.
Hi guys, I'm Zia. I'm a student currently, a rising senior at Cal Poly Humboldt in Northern California, but I'm here for the VIMS REU program, and Adriane is my mentor, and I'm super interested in, looking at the gender side of things, just wanting to know more about women in aquaculture and just again, like the diversification of the industry and of people's livelihoods. And I am looking forward to finding my place in this world of like social science with the aquaculture niche. And I'm excited to meet you all. So yeah, thank you.
All right, and Ian.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ian Yu. I'm a mediator and program manager at Meridian Institute. For those who aren't familiar with Meridian, we are a nonprofit consultancy that specializes in acting as trusted third parties in collaborative decision-making processes. So we've been working in the U.S. aquaculture space over the last 4 years. Mainly what we've been doing is we've actually engaged over 250 ocean stakeholders, particularly around their thoughts and feelings about the emergence and the growth of the U.S., particularly the U.S. marine aquaculture sector, and what that means in terms of their views on co-location, shared use, things like that. So much of my work has focused particularly on workforce development within the U.S. aquaculture space, and looking specifically at the intersection of U.S. aquaculture workforce development and diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI. So some of the work that we've done is we've done a lot of interview research. We did 2 rounds of interview research. The first was looking at and trying to understand, for those who are working at some sort of intersection between DEI and workforce development in the U.S. aquaculture space, what are different DEI opportunities and challenges all across the workforce development pathway. And then we've also done some interview research talking with members of the U.S. aquaculture industry to try to understand their views on DEI as well. Taking some information from those 2 rounds of interview research, we also have been convening a lot of dialogues on workforce development and DEI, including a roundtable that we held at Aquaculture America, and we continue to be convening conversations around that space as well. So happy to chat more about our work, but that's just a little bit about me and the work that Meridian is doing in this space as well.
Thanks. And Rebecca.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rebecca Woodburn. I am a biological scientist, which is a bit of a misnomer because it's a desk job. With FDACS, our Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, within the Division of Aquaculture, and specifically on the Education and Development Program. So we do a lot of education related for everyone from K through 12 audiences up to like the farmers in the industry. But I also, when I was working on my master's thesis, I worked with Adriane and did my thesis on the impacts of Florida's shellfish aquaculture leasing system. So talked to a bunch of farmers to kind of get their perspectives on how the leasing system for shellfish aquaculture in Florida has impacted their operation.
Good to see you again, Rebecca.
Good to see you too.
So next I have Mike.
Hi, everybody. Sorry, I'm in transit right now, so apologies for not having my video on. My name is Mike Blakely. I am, among other things, the co-founder of a nonprofit called Sea Green Insights, which I founded last year to focus on the global seaweed sector. Essentially, our mission is to accelerate investment and innovation in the seaweed sector by raising consumer awareness. A bit of a long journey, but the reason that we founded the nonprofit is, as some of you may know, the literature confirms that there's a very low awareness of seaweed products and their applications globally, but especially here in North America. Yet It's been receiving all kinds of attention in the media, which is a good thing. But if you start to really drill down to the consumer, their awareness of seaweed's different applications is extremely limited, right? So if you think about an org chart where you've got just seafood at the top, right? You all know you could break that org chart down into about 100 different little boxes before you get the consumer understanding something like farm-raised salmon or oysters relative to the wild version, right? So we are so far away from that with consumers and seaweed that we thought that there was a need to focus on the education side of it, really in order to crowd in people, particularly entrepreneurs, startups, and other venture capital into the sector. We see a lot of promise for the sector globally. So we're not just focused in the US, although we're based here. And so we're focusing on that. We're only 8 months into it, so there's still a lot of approaches that we're testing out, but we're very positive. And thanks to Joe, we are going to be presenting our most recent study, which is on lessons learned marketing seaweed products in the US. And the reason we did this study is there are all kinds of, particularly on the academic side, studies that look at consumer perceptions and attitudes, willingness to purchase models. As a former, business owner myself in the seafood industry, I didn't really find those studies too helpful in terms of understanding how I could be crafting approaches and tactics for marketing my products in the US market. So we did this study. We interviewed about 25 to 26 of the largest producers in the US and support organizations, including some people from Sea Grant. And we released it just last week with the help of the Fish Site, and Joe helped with that as well. And we're really excited about this study and its results, and it's just the beginning for us. And we're going to be talking about it, I think, next week, right, Joe?
Yes, next Wednesday, same time.
Yeah, tuning in today, not only because of interest in the topic, because that is relevant in the seaweed sector, but also to get a feel for how I can make sure that it's a good one next week. So thanks so much.
Great, thanks. And so, Joe, that's next week's Connect and Learn?
Yes, I'll be posting the event today. So yeah, be on the lookout for that.
All right, awesome. And I think we have 2 folks left. So Alex.
Hi all, sorry, my camera and microphone are being weird today. I'm Alex Horn. I'm with NOAA's Office of Aquaculture. I'm a communication specialist. I've only been in this position for about 2 years, and it's my first experience with aquaculture. But my background is in psychology and conservation biology. So I'm really interested in tricky communications. I used to work on Florida Panthers in South Florida. So yeah, anything that I can learn about social acceptance, social license with aquaculture, I just want to learn it all. So I'm so glad you have this. Thank you.
Right. And last but not least, Erin. So we were just going through and doing brief intros and sort of your connection to social dimensions.
Okay, awesome. So my name's Erin. I work for the UGA Marine Extension and Georgia Sea Grant. I'm just starting a job as the seafood specialist here. And so I'm interested in social dimensions of aquaculture because I know that's going to be a future focus of the state. So.
All right, great. And one thing I didn't mention in some of my social dimensions work is on sort of the seafood consumer and server side of things. And so Erin's on a project with me also where she's been training servers how to talk about oysters and sort of bridging farmer to the sort of communication aspect of it. And all right, I think there's nobody I missed, right?
Yeah, I think that's everybody.
All right, awesome. Thanks, guys. And so with this, our group on the exchange is the community of practice. And so Emily, if you are in a wind-free or less wind spot, do you want to talk a little bit about the community of practice?
Yes. Am I windy right now? I'm good? Okay.
You look windy, but you don't sound windy.
Look at your fireworks. Yeah, I'm usually in my home office, but as a social scientist today, I'm out helping construct a scallop hatchery. So that's also something I'm doing. But yeah, so our community of practice, we just thought that there was a lot of value to connecting with other people across the US because this is, Adriane's done work in the Gulf Coast. She's at VIMS now. I'm up in Maine. And there's a lot of different stuff going on in all different places across the US. And, you know, that's because of a whole host of different reasons. Like there's different aquaculture sectors in different areas, but also like regulations are different state by state. So we're all kind of farmers are facing different barriers in each area. So I think there's a real strength to kind of connecting so we can know what everyone else is doing. So we're not repeating stuff and kind of learn from each other. So I think that was kind of the goal, the need for a community of practice, because it can get lonely as a social scientist, I think. I don't know if all you agree, but so there's been, for me, it's been really valuable to do that networking and connect with others and collaborate on projects. So yeah, that was kind of the goal of the community of practice. And at Aquaculture America, after our session, we had a discussion, and others in the audience also seemed to think that would be of value. So we had kind of a discussion about how that would look for how that could best kind of work for everyone. I'm seeing your chat, Joe. State being different.
Yeah, just want to share a
that's
resource.
neat. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, so is that what you were looking for, Adriane? Just a kind of a justification of why we thought? Yeah. So
so can I actually ask a question based on that?
Yeah.
Which is, you know, just like as far as the website goes and what your goals are for the community of practice, like what would you like the website to do differently that could make you know, it easier to communicate as a group? Or, you know, like what have you liked, what have you not liked? That really goes out for everybody, but yeah, especially you two leading the group.
Yeah, I think there are some really useful features of this. Like we talked about having a place like a repository to put, you know, articles that are of interest, or like if we wanted to share data sets. So having that capability has been really nice. Having the different discussion threads within the group is also really nice. So we have one going out, survey research. We have like the general one. So that's also been pretty valuable. What do you have thoughts, Adriane?
Yeah, I don't think there's anything that we've seen that like to be improved or changed. I think both of us have been stretched a little thin this spring, and so haven't been as active as we would like. But I'm trying to think of some of the things that came out of the feedback that we had that we maybe haven't done yet. I think like in the discussion, people talked about wanting more opportunities like this and opportunities to network and hear what others are doing. And so having, we did speed talks in the Aquaculture America presentation, but I think people were interested in being able to dig a little deeper into the work that others were doing. And yeah, I think so far we're just trying to sort of build our presence a little bit more and see what works for others. And we'll be continuing to use that. And next year at Aquaculture in New Orleans, at the Triennial, we'll be hosting a similar session, maybe with a combination of regular talks and speed talks, but still just trying to find opportunities for people to connect and hopefully find space to think about collaboration. And if there's, you know, things, so like Emily and I are on a proposal now that will cover a larger geographic range, but maybe we could cover even more of a range with other folks collaborating, that sort of thing.
Awesome. Yeah, I did have another follow-up question, unless y'all had anything, but I guess like I'm just curious in getting ready for this talk, I was trying to read up on like what exactly a community of practice is. This is like at the Mid-Atlantic Sea Grant meeting that I was at not too long ago. There are a lot of these coming up, or it seems to be a real hot topic in in not just in aquaculture, but just generally in the sea grant world. So I was curious if y'all could, help define that better, and like how that ties in with the website.
Want me to take
I'll
it?
take.
You want to take it?
You go first, Emily.
Well, I'm just going to say, I think community of practice, if you're looking up like the actual definition of a community of practice, I think that this could become a classic community of practice, which is, you know, like a group that learns together collectively for a common goal, relies on each other for building that knowledge. But you have to have those relationships built. So I think that this is the first step to, we're using it in a more loose, a little bit more loosely. But this is an opportunity to kind of create a community of practice out of what we're doing. Yeah.
Yeah. And the only thing, I guess, adding to that, for us, we were also thinking about coming at it from different directions so that it is multidisciplinary, where people have interest in sort of similar themes, like social license, for an example, as a theme that people have a shared interest in, but also could be shared background or disciplines. And so that there's sort of opportunities to connect in different ways, with the idea that people are working on social dimensions in different sectors, using different approaches and trying to find the way to sort of have the biggest impact with what we do. And hopefully
Awesome.
that the industry welcomes it.
Yeah.
And is involved in it.
So I have more questions, but I just wanted to throw it out. If anybody in the audience had questions for Adriane and Emily, it can be anything related to social dimensions of aquaculture.
Yeah, and also if you have thoughts on the community of practice and what you'd like out of it, sort of we're still building that out. So welcome that too.
I guess I'm interested in like how perceptions around aquaculture are different within each state. Like I know for my master's program, it was based in Maine. So a lot of the background information we were getting was on like Maine aquaculture and how there's a lot of negative public perception surrounding aquaculture, and that causes a big barrier to getting leases and everything because all of the hearing process. But then meanwhile in Florida, there isn't as much of an issue with like negative public perception. There's kind of more of an issue of getting information out about what aquaculture is in general. Like a lot of people just don't know what it is. So I guess I'm interested because we're all from different areas, like how public perceptions are different in different regions.
Yeah, I think that's a great point and topic. And then, so for those that don't know, I've been working on a project with Haley Limwen where we were in the Gulf of Mexico, Southern California, and most recently Alaska. But a lot of it, we're starting out, it's looking at perceptions of aquaculture and social acceptability. But we start out very high level with, what do you think when you hear the word aquaculture? What do you think when you hear the word mariculture? Like, does anything come to mind? And it from community to community has varied widely. In Alaska, mariculture and aquaculture are very different things. And even like in the Gulf, for example, where people initially wouldn't have a frame of reference for aquaculture, if you then mentioned like catfish farms or crawfish farms, then it was like, oh yeah, that I know that, and we're generally supportive of it. But I guess, is anyone else in the group working on perceptions that vary from place to place, or maybe are uniform, which would be unusual?
I'm trying to, I mean, not on the scale as yours and Haley's, obviously, Adriane, but I'm trying to look at like a couple different places in California and kind of do something similar. Particularly looking at like co-use, and so examining that as basically just investigating if that like alters perceptions from like across locations, but also just across like different dynamics of the different sector interactions that folks are experiencing. So yeah, I'm also focusing on that, which like leapfrog off of what you and Rebecca were saying. I think the other thing that I'm really excited about the community of practice is this type of stuff when it gets into like the nitty gritty of methodology, because I think like when I think about the stuff that I'm trying to do this summer, hearing what you and Haley did through the website or just like through the community of practice is really helpful for me in like forming my methodology, but also I think just like adds another dimension and understanding potential results and like what the broader impact of our different studies could be, especially when we think about them like holistically across the community of practice. So just adding in the methodology plug for the community, because that's something that I'm excited about with this process.
And Mike, I see your hand up. I'm also going to take notes just to emphasize some of the things.
Yeah, thank you. I'm actually excited about a community of practice forming around this because aquaculture is extremely technical. And to ask a consumer to understand that is asking a lot, right? Everything from, as I mentioned, salmon farming before to multi-trophic. I mean, it's just so technical. And so I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area, and there's sort of a famous case of an oyster farm here that was on federal lands, and you may be familiar with it. And it just was a firestorm issue. And it was a very small footprint farm. It'd been there for a while. And the community opposition to it was pretty fierce and unexpected, because we're in a community here where local agriculture and the idea of buying local is a very strongly embedded in our DNA. But there was such opposition to this, and the point is, not only is it technical, but the opposition to aquaculture and use of natural resources is very strong and very well organized, and really something that we found in our early work is a bit of a challenge, right? So I mentioned that we specialize in seaweed, and when you start talking about seaweed farms to the average person, their first thought is that you're going to have some type of infrastructure along the coastline that's not only going to ruin the views but be environmentally damaging. You're all very familiar with these arguments, right? So it extends to every species that's possibly cultivated. And so I think having a community of practice that is looking at demystifying some of that, and that may already be happening, and we want to do some of that in our own work as well. But I would say that is an area that I'm going to tune into very closely with this particular community practice.
Great, thanks. And again, I'm taking notes on the side here. I'm not texting or anything.
I saw the other Adriane's hand.
Hi, yes. I'm Jazia again. Off of what Mike said, I'm not currently doing any research or anything, but I'm also from the San Francisco Bay Area, and I know exactly what he's talking about, the Drake's Bay Oyster Farm, I'm pretty sure. And I remember that was a huge part of my childhood, going there and actually talking to farmers. My mom was involved with stuff over there, and I so agree that having the social dimension plus the environmental factors and people's not necessarily misconceptions about anything, but a lot of fear and just general conservationist concern, which is so valid and important to incorporate into the conversation. I think having more joint conversations about that stuff and making those an effort to have those be way more publicized than they are now is definitely also super important. And exactly what he was saying, we all know stuff about finfish farming and the safety of that when it comes to conservation and environmental degradation is so important. And yeah, just the blending of these conversations. That's my input.
Yeah, Erin.
Hey, yeah, just kind of going off of that perception idea. So I think in our state, there's this push for us wanting to increase the local seafood movement. So there's little sectors of the state that are pretty solid in the local food movement in terms of their progress with food hubs, food markets, and things like that, and how to bring seafood into that idea. The problem being is that our wild caught fisheries don't harvest enough, and probably shouldn't harvest enough to feed the whole state. And so I think I'm interested in addressing the perception of people, to not only consumers, but also fishermen, to realize, is there a co-marketing strategy that can be done between, the wild caught and future aquaculture, so that they don't feel like they have to be against each other, but they're both kind of working in the same local food movement to build a sustainable food source for, healthy citizens and stuff. Just because we want to support the shrimpers and their livelihoods and a lot of the culture that comes with that, but realizing that that's not sustainable to provide the whole state with seafood if that's what they want to ask, like seafood processors and stuff to buy their shrimp. They just don't produce enough, and it's not consistent enough when it's coming from just the ocean. So it's kind of, you know, how do those two pieces work together?
We've kind of talked about this a lot, like with our team of like our messaging, especially when it comes to aquaculture with fisheries. And so we're very strict about how we talk about aquaculture's relationship to fisheries, and that we're looking for a future where they work together and like collaboratively, and that it's not aquaculture versus fisheries, but it's like both seafood sectors working together to feed the population. And so like that's how we do our messaging. We're always careful to include fisheries in our discussions and stuff like that.
Awesome, that's very cool.
And I guess for either of you, have you seen where trying to sort of market or brand and move forward in that path has helped with some of the contention? Like I'm thinking of like Apalachicola as one example, but like have you seen sort of coming together?
I haven't seen a lot of the effects of that messaging. Part of it, a big section of it, we talked about it a little bit when I first started for a project about like it was spatial planning for offshore aquaculture. But we're also kind of starting on a new project now where we're going to be creating essentially a landing page that has information about like all different topics within aquaculture. So it was a really fun meeting to like brainstorm all the topics that we're going to include. But like we talked about, okay, the goal of this, because that project is kind of like a preface to a larger project, which would involve increasing the amount of aquaculture products that consumers buy. And so we're like taking a step back to say, okay, how can we like improve the messaging so that one, people know what aquaculture is, and two, they don't just automatically think aquaculture bad. So we're in the beginning phases of that. We literally just had our brainstorming session a couple of weeks ago. But that was one of the things that we talked about there is like, okay, if we're trying to get people to buy more aquaculture products, how do we tell people to buy more aquaculture products without saying, don't buy wild fishery products? And so we kind of came to the conclusion of mentioning it like, yes, there are benefits of buying wild caught products and there's benefits of aquaculture products. One of the benefits of the aquaculture product is that there's a lot more care that goes into the product. So there's a lot of handling and like culturing that is involved within aquaculture. And so you get that connection to the producer in that way, in a way that you don't necessarily get with wild fisheries.
You know, one thing that didn't come up in any of our discussions at Aquaculture America or things for the community of practice would be maybe the opportunity where we have these sort of common interests and common themes and work areas to come together. And even if it's not generating new data, new research at the time, but coming together with sort of statement, no worries, Emily, coming together with like statement papers and like talking about these needs. And not that I'm in a rush to try to add another paper to write to my list of things to do, but maybe that's something that could come out of the community of practice, is the opportunity to sort of highlight these issues, and not necessarily a peer-reviewed paper, but something that would be, or like a peer-reviewed research paper, but something that would be more editorial.
I think that's a great idea, Adriane. And actually, yeah, if I can just interject here really quick. I sort of wanted to share some options that y'all have with the group page on how to have conversations like that. I can share my screen really quick.
Sure.
Yeah, so okay, so we have the social dimensions of aquaculture. And so when I've talked to other users, especially younger people, and y'all don't have to comment on this, but I've heard from other people that it's a little intimidating to post on the exchange just because we have a lot of leaders from the aquaculture sector on there. And, you know, the social dimensions of aquaculture group is public, so anything that's posted on there will appear on the main feed. I do think it is important to keep it public just because, you know, our website's all about collaboration. And specifically, I always get excited when I see interactions happening between people who usually wouldn't be talking in aquaculture. I think that's like the core of what the website's about. However, there are other options. One thing I wanted to bring up was y'all do already have 40 members, which is great. That's a really good sized group. One thing is that with other groups, because they're tied to an industry role, like researcher, for example, when a new member registers and selects researcher as their industry role, they're automatically joined to the researcher group. Now, we could make that an option for social dimensions of aquaculture. My sort of criteria for that is just that the category would sort of cover a fairly broad group of people. So maybe something like social scientists, since I know a few of you are social scientists or might consider yourself that. So that's just something to consider. I would be happy, or I would be open to that, making that something that new members could select so that they would automatically be entered to your group. That's just something to think about. As far as, you know, navigating that, wanting to maybe have a more welcoming or casual environment where people feel more comfortable speaking and not feeling like everybody in the industry is going to see it. You have a couple of options. So one is we can create subgroups that are under a group like yours, social dimensions of aquaculture. This could be like a specific working group or something around a particular subject matter under the greater category of social dimensions. And that group could be private, where you would only be able to see it if you were a part of that group. And people would have to be approved if they try to join. That's one option. And that's still something where, you know, you would have people joining the group because they're generally interested in social dimensions, but then they would see that subgroup and maybe that's something that is their niche and they would want to join that. So that's one option. Another option is group messaging. So in the past month or so, I installed a new instant messaging feature. Before you had to refresh the page to see new messages, which was awful. But now, you know, they appear in real time, so you can have real time conversations. And to do that, you would just go on the messages part or the messages tab on the group page, and you can type in a message there. You can share documents through there, videos, and anything that you would be able to do in a typical messenger. And only people who are in the group will see those messages. So that's sort of a way to have, you know, more private conversations or more, you know, casual, more inside focused conversations. So, you know, how it might go is, you know, somebody might bring up, and I think you can actually, and this is sort of up to you, Adriane and Emily, but you can actually, I believe, under the settings in the manage tab, you can decide who can message in the group. Yeah, but I think right now it's set to everybody, which I think is fine. But yeah, like somebody could start a conversation about something in the group messaging, and you know, once that conversation takes more of a reaches a consensus maybe on something, then maybe that's something that you post on the main group page and sort of open it up to everybody else on the exchange. But yeah, I'll cut it off there, but I just wanted to share that with y'all as sort of an option, as different ways that you can have conversations on the exchange.
Great, thanks, Joe. I did have a couple questions. So
yeah,
right now when we add a comment, like in the feed, that will be distinct from messages. So the feed goes out to everybody on the exchange. Messages
right.
are separate. And then for the subgroups, oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to add too that the difference between discussions versus regular posts on the feed is with a regular post. Here, I'll share my screen again. With a regular post, like using yours as an example, where Nathan commented on here, that comment stays with that post. So like in the feed, it's going to move down. All the comments are going to move with that post, if that makes sense. Versus if you start a discussion topic on this tab, every new response to that will appear as a new post in the feed. So it's sort of a way to keep, a discussion is a better way to sort of keep the discussion going, rather than like the responses to a post, going with that post. But that's just something, to clarify. And you were asking
Joe,
about, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna, so if I'm posting in the discussion, like the survey work discussion,
right,
that's going on the main feed for everyone also?
Yes.
Oh, okay, that's good to know.
Yes, because it's a public group, that means that everybody is able to see it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Outside of the social dimensions group.
Yes.
Like it's going on the
right. Okay. And the one exception is the messages. So messages are only visible to people in the group. And typically on the website, like if you're having a one-on-one conversation with somebody, you have to have a connection with them. They have to approve your connection request, just like on other social media. But with group messages, you don't have to be connected to everybody in the group. Everybody just by being in the group will be able to see. Although I do encourage y'all to go to the members list for the Social Dimensions group, and you can just really quickly just shoot off connection requests to everybody in the group. That way, if you do want to have one-on-one conversations with them, that's an option.
So I have a question well, actually, Adriane, you have more questions about the
platform? I did have one other question, and now that I realize that everyone got to see my boil just go out. But so for the subgroup, say someone wants to like, hi Rusty, I'm going to call you out. Say Rusty wanted to create a subgroup for just Alabama or the Gulf of Mexico. Could he create that on his own, or do Emily and I, as the organizers, need to like create that group on behalf of a member?
So I believe anybody can. So I will investigate that further, but I believe when you are creating a group like this, you're able to set a parent group. You can like select like this is a parent group. Now, generally, I think, it's a good idea to run it by the group organizers before doing that. But yes, I believe anybody can, but if there's any issue, I'm happy to help with it.
That was my other question, Emily.
Yeah. I was just going to ask the group we have here if there are any so not discussion topics. Now I'm going to, so group topics that we'd like started. Like Claire, you were talking about methods. I mean, that might be an interesting topic to have, like a group discussion if we want to bounce ideas off of each other, or the state to state differences, or like we've been talking about use conflict with wild fisheries and aquaculture. So what kinds of topics do you think would be most useful?
I think the fisheries versus and like an aquaculture dynamic that we're talking about would be a super interesting one.
Yeah, especially hearing from people across the on all the coasts, that would be super interesting.
Something tells me it is location dependent, but I still think that conversation would be fascinating for me personally.
Yeah.
Oh, Rusty, were you going to say something?
Yeah, there was a group started for oyster mortality. And unfortunately, I was late getting on. Been on the phone with the USDA. We're having a significant mortality event this week and the last couple of weeks in the Northern Gulf. So that's a top of mind for industry and for researchers and scientists and extension specialists like me. We keep getting asked questions, and apparently there are multiple stressors involved, and so that's a group that's top of mind.
I do just want to say we also do have an oyster mortality group on the exchange.
That's what I was mentioning.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I think that would be a great discussion topic.
Any others?
Yeah, sorry, I don't know, you go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead.
I was going to say I had another one, but I'm not sure, and maybe it's just because I was on a red eye last night, but I'm not sure if it would like be a better discussion versus group thing. But like how you have the survey work one in there, I would personally be interested in like an interview specific or a semi-structured interview specific discussion or group, or yeah, I guess I'm not quite sure on like which one of those formats would statistically be better for that type of conversation and method to share knowledge, but that's something I'm interested in.
Yeah, that would be great. I feel like for the methods one, maybe the groups would be better. So I don't know how many people want to get into the nitty gritties of like survey and interviewing on the main page. So maybe we do groups for that. And what about, I just was thinking we have some communications people in here, but like communication and messaging might be a really interesting one also, which ties into all these other topics. But I mean, I think as when I'm out in the talking to people that are just industry members, the number one thing that people ask me is about wording, messaging, like how to communicate about aquaculture, which isn't necessarily my specialty, but helping to, understand what drives perceptions is my piece, but the communications piece is so important. So having that group discussion might be nice. Erin, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Kind of going along with that, maybe like a resource discussion of like videos or interviews of people that are in aquaculture. So, I think it was Rebecca was talking about the benefits of aquaculture, like talking about the amount of care and everything that goes into these animals they're growing for food. There's a certain social dimension of that that could be revealed to people. And sometimes the videos of like, there's a lot of perception of like the bad aquaculture or maybe outdated thoughts and perceptions of historical aquaculture sites that were not sanitary or things like that. And so kind of resources to get more beneficial or like safer looking, to build trust in the consumer, to actually see how much thought and effort and passion goes into some of these aquaculture units. So yeah, resources for people to be able to tap into instead of having to like reinvent the wheel or spend like tons of time searching the internet for those kind of things.
And just going off, I think that's a great idea. Just going off of that too, it's like option to, if y'all were to like compile like videos or whatever material on that subject or any subject, I'm happy to help turn that into a course on the website that people could enroll in and take as a learning module. I think, Adriane, that sort of strikes your point on like I think the website is really great. Like I would love to work up to where people are producing peer-reviewed things, like actual legit articles on the website. But I think, we have to take steps to get there. So I think, as easy as you can make it for people to sort of share different types of content with each other. Like in the educators group, they just started like a weekly sharing resource post, which I thought was a great idea. And just like gathering material like that could then be organized as a course. And then, that helps build your community of practice that way, and have, new members of the group, point them, hey, if you want to learn what we're about, you can go through this course and see, this material to give you sort of an introduction to the social dimensions of aquaculture.
That's great.
Can I ask a little bit more about what a course would look like on, like, is it just
Sure.
reading or videos or, yeah.
So let me show you. We actually sort of, I don't know if this is exactly what Aaron was talking about, but there were these collection of interviews done with people from the industry from I don't know when. It was a little while ago. But yeah, basically I just organized them by which part of the country they were from. And a lot of the courses we have right now are basically webinars that I've sort of organized like a little better than, just a YouTube playlist where you can't really see anything other than the title. So like I organized Emily, yeah, the main Aquaculture Innovation Center's webinar series by like subject matter, and then I sort of, include the description with the video. And actually, I've been uploading the Connect and Learn sessions like this one with its own course. And for this one that we had today, I'm going to try and do like a text summary to go with the video as well, for if anybody y'all know who missed it and you want to point them to something, they can find it there. But I mean, like, you can also have quizzes with these courses, like the sort of AIE 101 course that I created. I created like quizzes that you can take at the end, and that's just your sort of like basic, you can do multiple choice or whatever, and it gives you a score at the end. And yeah, we can even do things like, people can earn badges when they complete a course. But yeah, I'm actually talking right now with an industry association about offering a professional certification through our website, where, it would be a combination of people taking certain lessons, but then also uploading certain documents that the person could then review, and then they would get access to purchase the certification, something like that. But yeah, it's basically, the possibilities are wide open. We can try and work with whatever y'all are wanting to do.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah. We are almost up on time, but this has been really great. Did y'all have any closing thoughts?
This has
Not
just
really.
been, yeah, this has been good. I think that these we had a similar, like a platform for social license that was organized by the World Wildlife Fund, and the difficult part was getting people to communicate with each other, because it is another social media app that you have to manage. But these, informal presentation, not that we presented anything, but where you can connect with other people and talk and see what you're doing, because that's what conferences do that, and they're like the best way of figuring out what's going on in terms of research. So having these regularly, I think, is going to be really useful.
Yeah, and I just on that point, as far as I've definitely heard other people bring that up too, as far as like one more social media. But I think like as far as like the burden of managing this social media, it's very low compared to other, like one member said it's like LinkedIn without the noise, and I think that's like a great description of it, because it not just in terms of it's much easier to find what you're looking for, but it's also just less stressful, or it feels like you're not being attacked by ads or anything like that. Like, yeah, so I hope people, yeah, I hope y'all give it a shot and just experiment and see, you know, what makes sense as far as, you know, discussions or group messaging. Because yeah, I think like those conversations should keep going in between conferences, and I hope the platform can be a way to do that. Any last questions? Oh, go
My
ahead.
final thought would just be to thank everyone for showing up. And I think you're all part of the group already, but if you're not, please join the Social Dimensions community of practice and feel free to start conversations on there yourselves.
Yeah, and thanks Adriane and Emily for leading this. This is great. And as always, if you have any questions about the website, just message me. All right. Have a good rest of your week, y'all.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.